If you had told me 5 years ago that I didn't have to work as hard and I could have success, I could have great opportunities, I could grow, I could learn, I just wouldn't have believed you. I would have said that's not true. You got to work hard, and those of you that are, all of you are solopreneurs. If you go out and investigate the successful people out there that are trying to teach you how to replicate success, you will hear things like, you got to be willing to sacrifice, you got to give up your personal life, you got to work 24 hours 7, you got to be disciplined. I mean, you will hear that over and over, and if I listen to it enough, I start to believe it. I start to go, yeah, oh no, but here's the really good news, and why I think you're here today and in on this conversation, because something inside of you is telling you there's another way. That it's possible to create a rich life, doing work you love in anything that is, and contributing to the world, being of service in any way you want, and to fund your life without having to carry that feeling of pressure and stress inside of you.
All right, but here's the thing. Over time, we started to get connected to them, and they started to trust us, and they started to relax, and they started to hear what we were pointing them to. And again, we were only pointing them to the same thing we're talking about, that your moment-to-moment experience comes through thought, that comes through you, regardless of where you are. Your experience of being locked up is coming through where your thinking is. And I even challenged them. I said, I bet there are moments while you're in here, you forget you're locked up. And they kind of looked at me like, oh no, there's no way. And I said, well, all right, let me push this. I bet there are times when you are reading a letter from a loved one, or you are engaged in a conversation with a buddy in the next cell, or whatever, where you do in that time frame, you aren't in prison, you are just engaged with a person or doing something. And they kind of looked at me and they said, well, I guess you're right. They finally gave into the fact of that. Now, over time, as they started to wake up to the fact of this, they just woke up to the fact that they're in thought. Yes, they're locked up, but they're in thought. After a while, everything changed. The fighting started to go down. They started to want to share this with each other. We started to have these fabulous conversations, and they really did see the difference.
Interesting observation about business people. You get a person, either whether they're an entrepreneur or whether they're, an executive that works for someone, and they work 50 weeks a year, at least over here in the States, and then they have 2 weeks off. Okay? During the 50 weeks, they have all these conundrums and problems and issues that they're dealing with, and they're doing their best during those 50 weeks to come up with solutions to their problems. And oftentimes they'll even do it on their spare time at night. They'll keep them up at night. And at the end of the year, at the end of the 50 weeks, they will have solved X number of those problems, and X number will remain unsolved. So then they go away on vacation. It takes them a couple of days to detox, slow their minds down so that they can smell the roses wherever they are. And they get their world and their business out of their head, and they're in the moment with their family, enjoying the scenery and enjoying the experience. And the last thing they want to think about is their business, and they're so happy that they can release all the stress that they had during the year. And then they get on the plane and they come back to their business and they realize, oh my word, I had more solutions to my problems and better ideas and more insights during those 2 weeks when I didn't even want to think about business than I did during the 50 weeks when I was dying to come up with solutions. So it's very puzzling to them. The second thing that happens is they go back to their desk and they look at their to-do list that they had before they left. And they look at it and they say, oh my word, this is so out to lunch. Half the things on here shouldn't be on here. They're not very leveraged. They don't make that much of a difference. And there's a bunch of things that would be very leveraged and very timely that aren't even on this list. What's going on here? This list is totally bogus. Okay? Now, let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that nothing has changed on the business front, that they're seeing the list in a different light has everything to do with their thinking and nothing to do with a change in circumstance. So let's stipulate that just to make it simple. How is that possible? Why did that happen? What's behind that? So that's one question I'd love you to contemplate. So that's the story I wanted to tell. And I ask you, while you're sitting there on the phone or on the Zoom call, what do you make of that? How did it happen that in 2 weeks, when the person is not even interested in thinking about business, they get more great business ideas and insights than they did in the 50 weeks when they were thinking about nothing else but business?
Who we are is that balance, that space, that clarity, that ability to think for ourselves, that ability to have perspective, that ability to have humanity. I mean, when we have humanity towards someone else, we're not doing it. So why, if that's built into us, why don't we have more than that? Why don't we have it more often? And this is essentially what we explain to the business world. Most people in the business world have been in this experience of flow, balance. I mean, give it, being at their best, call it whatever way you want. But it looks in the corporate world like it's a rare thing that you occasionally are lucky enough to be in. And if the stars align and the sun is in your face and the wind is in your back and it's sloping downhill and the circumstances organize themselves, well, then you get to be there. Except when you ask people, most people are there very often at difficult times in their life or on a really complicated project. So if it seems to be able to show up and it seems to be built in, why don't we have more of it? Now, here's the answer. The answer is we essentially have lots of mental habits that we acquire as we go through life that pull us away from it.
So we think of productivity as a one-to-one ratio between effort and reward. I put out 1 unit of effort, I get 1 unit of reward. If I put out 3 units of effort, I get 3 units of reward. If I want 5 units of reward, I'm going to have to find a way to make 5 units of effort, right? So that's part of what drives us to do more, because we want more result. But the variable that almost no system I've seen takes into account is that ratio isn't fixed of 1-to-1, effort to reward. And the easy way for most people to see that is the bad way, right? It's easy to see that there are times where you run around like a blue arse fly and nothing gets done, right? Where you're putting in 3 units of effort and not even getting 1 full unit of reward. Well, it works the other way sometimes too, where you put out your 1 unit of effort, but you get 3 units of reward or 5. Way more comes back. It comes back to you disproportionate to what you put in. I'll kind of share what I've found really helpful with clients, but then I'll also share my journey with it, because in some ways, if you said to my team, hey, Michael's giving a talk on do less better, they would laugh, right? Because, relative to most of humanity, I still do quite a lot.
You do more than any person I've ever met.
But relative to me, I would say I do less than half of what I used to do. And my wife would back me up on that. Like I really actually am around. So it's not about being less productive. It's about seeing that productivity is nonlinear. Well, that's what doing less better is really about.